morning, everybody. Hi, Julia. Good to see your face. And Marcia Lynn. Hello, hello. You see Claudia is here. Christina. That's great. Letting Karen in right now. Kathy and Suzanne. Miss Karen. Hi, Claudia. So if folks are interested and would like to turn their cameras on, you're welcome to. So far, all the names I've seen are folks who've been here before. Let me just turn that off. Okay. Marcia Lynn, you're all bundled up. It's a cold one, yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, it looks like okay, got some folks inside and some folks outside today. That's perfect. Jermaine's coming on. Okay. Well, I hope everyone is well. I'm glad to see you here this morning. It's chilly in the shade, but very warm in the sun here today. So I'm grateful that I've got a little bit of sun. We're expected to get quite a bit of rain in the next day or so. But today's a beautiful day. So it's nice to be here with you all. All right, so go ahead and find a nice cozy spot to sit. Today we're going to focus mostly on our eyes. So if you are indoors and you'd like to leave your window closed, if it's too cold, that's probably going to be okay for today, though it's always nice to hear what's happening out there. But we've been focusing a lot on our ears the last couple of weeks. And so today we're going to focus on our eyes, because I was thinking this morning that in most parts of the country, this is a really great time of year to start to see waterfowl. But waterfowl can be really tricky, like the ducks and other shorebirds and whatnot. But they can be tricky because what happens with them is that they're often quite far out in the water. So unless you have a scope, they can be difficult to tell apart. But one thing that you can rely on, or at least focus on when you're looking at waterfowl, is their behavior. And so today we're going to focus on our eyes and what we see. And I want you to just start to be able to have some confidence in the things that you're seeing. And it doesn't matter. Some people are able to see long distances, some people aren't. And so today we're going to do a little bit of both. And even with binoculars, if you're able to pick up certain behaviors of birds, then they can tell you a lot about who they are. So, and some quite distinctive. There's some behaviors that certain birds have that are unique to that species. So without further ado, find yourself a cozy spot to sit and just get comfortable for a moment. Put your feet on whatever ground may be below you. Might be the earth below you, might be the floor. But just tap into that connection that's there between you and the earth. And I'll just remind folks that you're welcome to keep and I would love to see your faces, so you can keep your video screen on, though we won't be focusing on faces just yet. If you do have your video screen on, you need to move around. Just please turn it off while you're moving, so it's not super distracting to folks. And then you can always turn it back on, of course. We'd love to have your faces here. And if you're new to this practice, if you're new to showing up here today, then I'll be guiding us through I'll be guiding us through this practice. Some people think of it as meditative, other people think of it as just connective. And then we'll have a time to chat about what we experienced afterwards. So, all right. So we feel our feet on the earth, feel that connection with the earth right now. Also, there's no rules. So if you are feeling called to do something other than what I'm recommending or suggesting or inviting you to play along with, and do that. If you're seeing something and want to pull your binoculars up, go for it. If you're hearing something and want to focus on that, then go for that. I will be muting myself because it's a little loud in the background. All right, so now that you're feeling your feet on the earth, what I want you to do is just connect with what you're sensing in your body. So what are you feeling moving in your body right now? Are you feeling your breath? Do you notice the rhythm of your breath right now? Maybe you hurried to get here and it's a little rapid. Or maybe you've been here for a little bit and you've had a chance to settle and your breath is settling as well. So just start to notice that. Notice if there's any tense muscles in your body right now. Are you feeling tightness anywhere? Are you feeling openness and suppleness? I know sometimes we tend to focus on the things that aren't working so well or that are, kinks in our neck or this or that, but what's working right now in your body? Give your attention to that for just a moment. So you're aware of your breath right now inside your own body, the depth or shallowness of that. You're aware of what's working in your body, what feels good. Now we're going to send our attention out to the smells that are in our environment, whether we're inside or outside. Take a nice deep breath. And with this breath, your intention is to smell what's in the air. Like you're a coyote or a fox. Sometimes you can take quick little breaths. Sometimes that helps. If you're ever smelling like a pasta sauce cooking, you take a couple little deep breaths as you're wafting it to your face. So you can do that right now. And just notice if you've been to this practice before, what might be different about the sense today compared to the last time we sat together. It doesn't matter if you're inside or outside. It's all just opportunities to get connected to the world around us right now. Awesome. And now, even though we're going to shift our awareness to a different sensation, I want you to still see how much you can perceive with the senses that we've already been connecting with. So right now we're going to shift our attention to our ears. And like you just send your hearing out as far as you can possibly hear. Go really, really far. Stretch your hearing for whatever's far for you. What's the furthest sound you can hear right now? And now go ahead and bring your awareness to the sound that it's closest to you. So we just sent our awareness and our hearing out to a far away sound, and now we're going to bring it a little bit closer in. So what's a sound that's drawing your attention, that's near to you? And just give your attention to that as much as you can, as much intimate detail as you can focus on with that sound. And now let's intentionally send our awareness in front of us with our ears, whether it's a loud sound or a quiet sound, or whether it's far or close, it doesn't matter. Just whatever sound is drawing your attention in front of you right now, while also remembering the sense in your own rhythm, in your own heart, in your breath. It's great. And now you can shift your attention, your awareness behind you. So what sounds are arising in the world behind you right now? Perfect. And I'll let you do this for the sounds to your right and to your left, and just notice how different or similar the world is for the sounds that are to your right and the sounds that are to your left. And if you're inside, it's okay. You can do these practices just as well inside as you can outside, though outside usually provides a little bit more to look at and listen to. And today, in case you joined late, we're going to be focusing our attention on our eyes. So just want to place yourself in front of a window if you can. All right, and so we're going to shift now to our eyes. So without forgetting the other senses, we brought in our awareness of what's happening inside of our body. We focused on our breath, on the scents that we were picking up, what the air was smelling like, and also what we're hearing. And so now what I'd like you to do, we're going to focus today on the practice of owl eyes. So that's how some people know it. And so the way to get started with that, one way, not the way, but one way, is to look for something far off in the distance. What's the furthest thing that you can possibly see right now? And then focus on one specific point, and whatever that is. And really focus good on that. Give all your attention to that, at least with your eyes. And now, even though your eyes are focused on one point, I invite you to soften your vision. So just allow everything in your peripheral vision to soften, but you're still going to be looking forward. You're still focusing on that one point, but you're able to soften your vision and really take in what's around you in a really big perspective. So just notice how far you can see with your eyes right now in all directions, above, below, to each side. And just let yourself sit there right now and just receive what you can through your eyes. Okay, awesome. So, as a start to our practice with our eyes this morning, we're going to stay in owl eyes. So, our intention, our goal is to stay in owl eyes as long as we can today. But I'm going to have us shift our awareness to different focal points. And so, first, I'm going to have you start with something a little bit closer. So, we just focused our attention on something that's far away. So right now, what I'd like you to do is find something that's, I don't know, maybe somewhere within the like 20 to 40 feet away from you kind of zone. And just find something. For me, it's a little crook in a tree branch. And I'm just going to focus on that. But the trick is, and the practice of this today is, even though our attention is on that and our owl eyes are expansive, what I want you to do is see if you can notice what moves beyond, like behind that thing that's close to you. So I'll let you sit in silence for a little while today. So we're going to sit here for maybe a few minutes, just taking in what we can. And if you find that your attention drifts and you sort of forget what we were doing, but you still are interested in playing along, something you can do is a practice that folks do in meditation, which is to count your breath. So with the choose a number, say maybe you want to do 4. So for the count of 4, you're going to breathe in, and the count of 4, you're going to breathe out. And then you can do that. It helps you stay a little bit more focused on the task at hand. Okay, nice work. So we're going to bring it in just a little bit, but still staying with something that's close to us. And for a little context, you can imagine that you're at a gathering, a social gathering of sorts, like a party, and you're having a conversation with someone, but you're still able to perceive what's happening all around you. So beyond the person that you're talking to, you can see when someone walks in the room, you can see, that there's a boisterous group over there, that there's someone sitting alone on a chair or whatnot, just also but you're still focused and you're still having a conversation with that person in front of you. So find something that's even a little bit closer this time and give all your attention to that, just like you might someone that you're having a conversation with, but still allow yourself to perceive everything that's happening all around you. Okay, so we're going to make a little shift now. And just for a little consolation, if anyone was wrestling with that, sometimes it can be hard for people to divide their attention, right? Like you're focusing on the person you're talking to, but you don't want to divide your attention. So just be really gentle. It's not that you need to split anything, but you're just receiving everything that's happening. And you're not tuning anything out. And really, you're not necessarily letting anything have priority either. It's just everything is allowed in that space. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to flip flop just a little bit. We're going to now go towards something that's quite a distance away. It doesn't have to be as far as you can possibly see, but I'd say a good distance away. And what I want you to do is focus on that one thing that's far away, like you're trying to watch a hawk off in the distance, but you're still able. Let's say that you're in Africa, right? This is a good test. So you're in Africa and someone says, "Look over there in the distance, really far away. There's a herd of elephants over there." And so you're focusing on the elephants off in the distance, but you don't want to forget to keep your attention nearby in case there might be a lion stalking up close to you. So let's try that right now. So if you're enjoying this moment, you can continue to do this, or you can shift a little bit and you can stay with the thing that's far away. But this time, I want you to really just bring your awareness to whatever is moving on the right side of your body. So you're still going to be looking at what's in front of you, but let's say that there is something. Let's say that there's, I don't know, maybe someone just walked into the room and you're a little uncomfortable about that person and you really want to keep your awareness on them, but you still want to be attentive to whatever, like the presentation off in the distance, like maybe a movie if you're at a drive-in movie theater or something. And yeah, so we'll try that on for a little bit. Right, and then for the next couple of moments, go ahead and shift your attention, if you want to play along, to what's happening on the left side of your body. So you're still looking off in the distance, but you're now going to shift your attention to the left side of your body. All right, so take the next moment to just offer gratitude to and thanks to whatever it is you got to be in relationship with this morning. You can do that in your own way in silence or whatever it is you do on your own. All right, and so now we're going to move to the time where we get to share. And if anyone is here who's new, um, I always invite people to turn their monitors on, especially right now, so that we can see who you are. You don't have to, of course. I know some people need to not do that, and that's fine, but you're invited to do that so we can connect and build relationship with folks who are here. But yeah, I just wanted to hear from anybody. Oh, we've got a baby with us today. Yay! Aw. All right, so would love to hear from anyone. We'll focus in the beginning for the first shares from anything that folks experienced during the sit today, and then we can hear from folks who have something that they want to share about something that might have happened to them throughout the week. So anyone want to offer anything about today's practice that came up for you or that you noticed in the process of doing it by focusing on your eyes today? Oh yeah, and you can just wave your hand if you want, or you can put your virtual hand up in the little button down below. Go ahead, Julia. Yeah.
So it's cold and foggy here today, and so I'm indoors, and I'm positioned in front of the windows where I have bird feeders. And somehow the email went out that I'd filled the feeders last night. So there's lots of activity. And so I had to chuckle at myself because in the past I've thought, see, I originally I thought we put feed out because the birds needed it in the winter. And then, I learned really that we put the bird feeders out for us so we could lure the birds in so we can see them. And during this focus time with the allies, I'm getting all this movement in the periphery of my vision, and I'm absolutely lured over there to see what bird that is. And so I'm the one being lured now by their movement. So I just had to chuckle about that.
That's awesome. I was curious to see if anyone wanted to share their experience about the bird feeder, because that, often, especially if you're inside, most people would position themselves in front of the window that has their bird feeder, of course. And so I was just curious what your experience was like if you have a bird feeder, because that can be interesting, because usually when we do have a bird feeder, we focus on the bird feeder, what's at the bird feeder versus what's happening maybe around the bird feeder while still, being attentive to the bird feeder. So I'm glad you shared that, Julia. Yeah, thanks for that. Awesome. Anyone else want to share their experience? Yeah, Linda, go ahead.
Okay. Well, I've got the bird feeders out. I put them out in the morning, and it's very cold here and very snowy. And it's been interesting. Not just this morning does it happen, but just about every day. First, one or two blue jays come in, and they just squawk a lot. It's like they're announcing that the bird feeders are out, it seems like. And then they'll take a few peanuts, and then they disappear. And then the juncos come in, and they feed on the sunflower seed, and then they start to dissipate. The chickadees come in, and they all have their turn. Not that there aren't some intermixing, but just the one that predominates. They seem to take turns. And then the finches will come in. So right now we're on the chickadee shift. The chickadees are in. So, and the blue jays came back in between the chickadees and the juncos today to grab peanuts, and they eat them in the trees right around the feeder. So it's kind of funny to watch, the shifts that they do. They just all seem to know that it works best if they don't all come at the same time, because I don't have a lot of bird feeders spread around. They're just, I have a pole and I put metal slats on it, and I put the pole so that there's protection from the canopy of the branches of the trees, but the branches are too light to hold cats, because I have cats around. And so the cats can't get at the bird feeders, and they can't get up the pole because it's a wood pole that I put metal slats on. So they slide. They can't climb up. So it's kitty TV essentially. They'll just sit at the bottom and watch, and but they can't get at the birds. But the birds seem to be very careful to take shifts, and there's not a huge amount of them all around, chasing each other off. So it's just kind of fun to watch.
Yeah, thank you. That was one of my other possibilities this morning, was to focus on the rhythm. It can be a little bit harder if there's not, like, often it's easier with wind. If you have wind is a nice one to focus on the rhythm of sort of the breath, of the earth. But sometimes with the birds, it can take a little time. Like, I have a rhythm with my crows. I think I've mentioned to you before that I see them come in the morning, and then at night, right around, before sunset, they'll fly back to where they're going to roost and whatnot. And so but there's different rhythms that the birds have, and I love that you pointed that out with the different birds that sort of take their turn or their shifts at the bird feeder, because that is something that happens, that the bird will come in these different waves,
Ah,
the more we are aware of it. And sure, there's some people, like my feeder often, I don't have it up right now, but in probably a couple weeks I'll put it up. That when they were here last winter, they would all be there at the feeder at a certain time, but there were certain ones that would show up first and second and third, and all
mhm.
that. And so, yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, that you're being attentive to the rhythm of what's happening with the world around you. Thanks, Linda.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you.
For sure. All right, anyone else want to share what happened for you this morning? Yeah, go ahead, Aaron. Aaron and Babe.
Hey. Yeah. Um, I I really enjoyed the owl eyes exercise. I thought it was going to be a little tricky because I have my 8-month-old out here with me. And what I mostly noticed is it kind of helped because I was looking at the point like 20 to 40 feet away, and then my 8-month-old is crawling around right in front of me in the dirt and like scooping the, and I kind of had to like make sure he was okay, but watch the, so it was really a good way to practice it, just having him need some attention, but he was content just doing his thing. I just wanted to make sure he wasn't putting anything weird in his mouth, any like little rocks or anything. So yeah, it was a nice way to practice that.
Oh, thanks for sharing that, Erin. Yeah, and that's a great thing, I think, gosh, for moms, of course, like to be able to be in allies more often, because you can and you will. If you're attentive, if you know your kiddo's down there and you're intentional to be aware of them, but you also want to pay attention to the birds or something, you'll know when there's like a motion to the mouth, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, you'll know when that sort of thing happens, and or they're standing next to something that you don't want them staying next to, or it might be unsafe or whatever. And so,
Yeah.
yeah. Thanks for bringing that up. That's rad. I'm glad that you had, it was sort of like a real life experiment. I brought up the idea about being at a party and you're talking to someone, but then
Yeah.
you actually had the kiddo that you had to be aware of.
Yeah. And I'm happy it like really worked, because I was kind of like, I'll try this with him. Maybe I'll have to jump off, but it worked out really well.
Yeah, and so some people, the more you practice it, and I wouldn't say don't try this right out the gate, um, but I use it sometimes when I'm driving, especially if I'm not necessarily in like heavy, intense traffic, because I do feel like that's when you really have to focus on what's right around you, but more when I'm driving maybe on the highway or a longer road, I will send my attention out, in front of me, but what that does is it softens my vision for everything around, and I'm much more apt to pick up like a deer or something that's maybe right at the edge of the road, and can often spot them relatively quickly, versus if I was just focused on the road in front of me, I'm not seeing what's ahead. So in some ways it can actually be
Yeah.
safer for yourself, whether it's with your kiddo or with when you're in the car. So that's awesome. Thanks, Erin.
Yeah.
I'm glad you guys joined us today.
Mhm.
Yeah, go ahead, Della.
Okay. Well, earlier today, before this session, I was watching the theater, and I think it's interesting that I have two Townsend warblers, and they seem to be the first to the theater, right at first light. And there's a male and a female, but they usually don't come at the same time. They seem to take turns. And then, of course, the juncos and the sparrows, the gold-crowned sparrows, a white-throated sparrow, and others all show up. But anyway, I was watching this morning and I saw something out of the corner of my eye in a distance, and it was the red-shouldered hawk. And he was quite a ways, maybe 80 feet away, and he landed mid-tree. And so I watched him for a little while. It did not seem to bother the little birds at all. They just continued on. And so I thought that was pretty interesting. And then just trying to use owl eyes this morning, I noticed that there's a acacia tree that's across the fence, and I see something. I believe it may be bush tits in that acacia tree, but they don't show themselves very much. They're hiding behind the leaves, and you just see a little bit. But it's not. They show enough of themselves so that it's not a sparrow, it's not a junco, it's not so I'm narrowing it down.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I guess the way I think of them is sort of the way people describe um, aspen trees. You know how aspen trees are like a body, like
Yes.
they really are like one entity. I feel like bush tits are that way. There's like an energetic that you can feel and see in the bushes, and you're just like, that's like an entity. It's not just, they're not like individuals, they're like an entity moving through the bushes. And
Mhm.
and there is a feeling when you get to know bush tits, and after you've observed them for a little while, you can really feel the distinction between them versus maybe some titmice or chickadees or whatever, other smaller birds. And that's great, Della. I'm glad you brought up the bush tits in that regard.
Yeah.
What was it for you that made you think it was bush tits this morning?
Well, because I've seen them before.
Mhm.
And they're usually, and it's the behavior, I think, because you usually, it looks like, you don't know how many there are, but it looks like maybe 4 or 5 or maybe 6, and you just see a little movement here and a little movement there. And when I had my camera out, I could really zoom in on them, and I could tell that they're just these little gray birds with little sharp bill, and they're tiny and round.
Very round, yeah.
So I think they're bush tits. I don't know for sure, but
But that's perfect. That's very aligned with like what inspired me to do this morning. For anyone who came late, I said one of the reasons we were going to focus on owl eyes today was because now is really a good time of year um, for the ducks and the waterfowl to come in. A lot of people are focusing on those, as bird lovers, because a lot of the other birds, you're lucky to have warblers still, but most people don't have any warblers around them. And so it can make it tricky to identify the waterfowl because quite often they're far out in the water. So unless you have a scope, it can still be challenging, but the behavior will tell you so much about them. And so just like what Della said, and of course it applies to all birds, and the bush tits are the perfect example where, maybe they were too far away for her to get a, clear view, especially but if you weren't using binoculars this morning, but there's an energetic about them that you can start to pick up. And once you learn about what it is that's unique to them. And so I love that popped up for you today. Yeah. That's awesome. And also the red-shouldered hawk. That's so cool.
yes,
Yeah,
yes.
I almost forgot about. I was like, there's something else Adela said. Yeah, it was a red-shouldered hawk that came up. And so, why do you think? And if anyone else has a guess, why do you think that that the little birds weren't concerned with the red-shouldered hawk or didn't really respond to it in any way?
I have my opinion, but
Okay, what's your take?
okay. Well, the little birds are fast, and the red-shouldered hawk is pretty slow, and comparatively. And that's one thing. And then the other thing is, I don't think that the red-shouldered hawk, his primary food is not small birds. I think his primary food is voles and other small mammals.
Yeah, and they actually, I think I'm pretty sure it's the red-shouldered, not just the broadwing, but even both of them love crustaceans. They love going for like crayfish and things like that in the water. And so the birds are aware that not that they won't ever go for songbirds, but it's not that common for them, especially in an area like where you live, Della, where it is a bit warmer. You're not getting any freezing of the water. And so, usually when like around here a week ago, like everything was frozen. So it makes it a bit trickier for those birds. So that the red-shouldered hawks, they might then start to, venture out to other critters. But where you are right now, they're probably relatively content with what they're able to access as far as food goes. And the birds can pick up on that, they know when they're being hunted and they know when they're not. And so I love that, you not only saw the hawk, but you were also, attentive to what was happening with the birds around you to see if they were responding to it, and that can tell you, well, again, that there's behavior right there. So, if you didn't know that was a red-shouldered hawk, simply by the behavior of the birds, who would you rule out in that regard? And this is just a great conversation for everyone to listen to. So who would you rule out the fact that the little birds aren't responding if you didn't know it was red-shouldered? Yeah, go ahead. Oop, are you frozen, Della, or are you just pausing?
Oh, I thought Jermaine was going to speak.
Oh, I didn't see. Sorry, Jermaine, did you want to answer? Yeah, go ahead.
She's still muted. There you go.
I was just saying to myself, sharp-shinned hawks, Cooper's hawks. They're the bird eaters. Bird eaters.
Bird eaters. Yeah, exactly.
Bird eaters.
The Sharpies, the Coopers. Who else? There's another group of birds in there that we could rule out. Sharpies, Coopers.
Falcons?
Yeah, the falcons, exactly. So granted that they have a different hunting approach, but we would know that bird coming in likely wasn't one of those birds, because if it was, all those little birds would have responded instantly, because that's just like, yeah, it's death to small birds. It's like, that's what those other birds mean. So Yeah, that's awesome. That's so great to just like look at the whole story of what's happening right there. And you did know which bird it was, but if you didn't, you could start to deduce based on what was happening with the small birds. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty rad. Awesome. Anyone else want to share a story? I will tell you that while you're maybe pondering a story, I had an experience a week or so ago where I went out for a run down the road, and and then I think I was walking in this one point because I was looking at the stone wall and I wanted to, it's this neat little stone, an old stone wall down there where the railroad tracks used to run over, but there's some cool different rocks. And I think it had been mended, the wall had been mended over time. And so you can tell the different ages of the stone, the construction is different and whatnot. So I was just looking at the stone, and all of a sudden, like literally almost at my feet, I saw a song sparrow. And I was like, whoa, you're so close to me, you know? And I was really surprised. It was not more than like 5, maybe 10 feet away from me. And so I stood there for a minute, just kind of like looking at in my peripheral vision. I don't want to look right at it because I knew that might actually scare it, but it, it sort of looked at me and responded, but then it just kept feeding, and it was feeding and feeding. And I was like, what is going on with the song sparrow? And I listened to everything else around me and I didn't hear anything right away. And then all of a sudden I heard some alarms. And this is a good distance away. It was maybe like, I don't know, maybe like a football field away, let's say, maybe even a little bit closer than that. I could hear some alarms. So it caught my attention. So I lifted my head up, and there was a sharp-shinned hawk. And I was like, oh, I wonder if the little song sparrow, because often birds will use us as protection, right? So we think, I'm like, oh, maybe I'm really special. Maybe I'm like in the zone, and the bird's not bothered by me. But I have a feeling that what was going on was that I was its protector in that moment. And so I was less of a threat than the Sharpie, but the bird still wanted to feed because it was quite cold out. And so it continued to feed with me around. But then as I left, I walked down because the Sharpie actually flew across the road into some power lines. And I thought, okay, it's going to be interesting to see where it goes. And maybe the sparrow didn't know it was even there because it seemed kind of far away. And then I walked up the road a little bit, and as I walked up the road, the Sharpie like took a dash exactly for where that song sparrow was. Like it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to try something else out. As soon as like I got maybe a little, not so much eye to eye or level with the Sharpie, but I was getting kind of close to it. It just made a beeline right for where that song sparrow was. And it made a dive to the ground, and it stayed in the ground for a minute. So I actually did walk down a little bit closer to it again, and with my binoculars tried to see if it got the song sparrow, and it didn't appear as though it had anything. But I thought to myself, I was like, I bet even from a distance, far away, that song sparrow somehow knew that Sharpie was around, and maybe even had eyes for it. So, and then I felt bad. I was like, oh, I'm sorry I left you, buddy. Counting on me maybe in that moment. But anyway, all right, we have time for one more story if anyone wants to share anything else. Go ahead, Linda. Yeah.
I was walking in a park close to here a few days ago, and I was with a group of friends, and it's been very cold here. It was like 2 or 3 degrees that day, so there weren't a lot of people around, very snowy. And we saw something on a branch that kind of hung over the trail. And we stopped, and it turned out to be this fuzzball that was a pygmy owl. He was so close. First pygmy owl I've ever seen. He just was sitting there, looking around, and there was a chickadee. The part that I didn't understand, there was a chickadee that was flying back and forth right in front of him. And they like to eat small birds, from what I understand. Pygmy owls like to eat small birds, but he didn't bother the chickadee at all. And the chickadee, I don't know what the chickadee was doing. He wasn't feeding. He was just going back and forth. And the owl just stayed put. And some people came from the other direction with a dog. And we motioned him to be quiet and pointed up. But this person was like, what are you talking about? I don't see anything. And the dog's jumping around. And the pygmy owl just sat there. It didn't seem, of course, it might have just been really cold. It was so cold, and it had been below zero at night. So, but he sat there for about 10 minutes, and we watched him for about 10 minutes, and then he flew off. But it was just so cool to see him so close, his head was swiveling around, and
Wow.
he didn't seem too worried about us, but he would kept an eye on us.
Yeah,
That's
yeah, for sure. With just for a little clarity, when you say the chickadee was flying back and forth, like I just want to paint a picture for everyone. So some people have like might have the idea that, you know, you have a chickadee who goes to your bird feeder, comes get something, goes away, does something with it,
Oh,
comes back. Like, was it that kind of flying, like where there's lots of time in between, or was it like literally right in front of the pygmy going back and forth or flying around the pygmy?
it was going back and forth in front of the pygmy. It wasn't feeding at all because we could see where it would go. It would just go across the trail to another tree branch, and then it would come from that tree branch and fly back across the trail right around where the pygmy was, and land in a tree that was a little bit further away from the trail. And then it would just fly back again. It just went back and forth.
And it wasn't
Um,
making any vocalizations or anything?
no, it was quiet.
So
Yeah.
that's kind of cool. I mean, in some ways, you know, it's possible that the pygmy got there before the chickadee did, and the chickadee just did. I mean, that's partly what they're really good at. Granted, that it was in the middle of the open, but you know, maybe it just was so good at, you know, keeping itself sort of contained that
Uh,
the chickadee didn't notice it, because that would be sort of prime target for the chickadee to go after and start alarming. And they hate the pygmy owls, yeah, because that's like their, you know, pygmy owl's favorite food, basically.
yeah.
So they certainly would, if anyone's ever seen this, kind of neat to see. Sometimes you can be alerted to a small owl's roost, like a nighttime, or I should say daytime roost, by the
Oh,
chickadees and the nuthatches. They'll be hollering around like a hole in a tree, and you're just like, what are they doing? Why are they all yelling at this little hole? And that's most of the time there's a little owl inside that hole. So yeah, the fact that it wasn't alarming, either the pygmy was maybe had fed and just had no interest, but even so, the birds still typically alarm at
yeah.
them. And so yeah, it's always sort of neat to see when the predators can go undetected.
Yeah,
They can.
yeah,
They sure can. Cats can, you know, all sorts of birds can go undetected. It doesn't
yeah,
happen for long, but that's kind of cool.
yeah. We were wondering if it was doing like killdeer do when they have a reason that they want you to get away from, well, like with a nest primarily, but they'll do it for other things. They'll kind of have a broken wing look and make noise and walk, kind of hop away from you. And so
Yeah,
it,
yeah.
it diverts your attention. And we wondered if it was doing something like that, if there was something going on with some other chickadees someplace and it was trying to divert attention. I don't know. It was just kind of interesting to see.
That is interesting. Yeah, those are all great questions. Fun for everybody to ponder and stuff.
Yeah.
Thanks, Linda. Everyone has such
Yeah,
cool
you bet.
experiences. This is awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks everybody. It was nice to sit with you all today and to chat.
Thank you.
Yeah. And Karen, I see you had a quick question for Lynn. Oh, did you have something to say, Julie, or are you just waving goodbye?
No, I have three questions
Oh,
for you, Lee. One, are you going to do the bird festival this year?
great
Yes.
question. Okay. And the
Yeah, I
question
was
two.
And I I'm wanting to make some pine cone feeders with my granddaughters,
Yeah.
as a little activity. And if anybody has any tips on what to do or not to do, uh, and I see some recipes online. I mean, it sounds pretty easy, but and then does anyone have a way to lure house sparrows away from the feeders?
Yeah. Well, those are some of those are bigger questions than I have time for today. What you can do is hop on to the Bird Mentor Facebook page and
Mhm.
post it there and see what folks respond. You know, if anyone else from here is welcome to jump on there, and that's a great place to have like a continued conversation for sure, because there definitely are some good ideas for all of those. And I'm glad you asked that for sure. But I will answer your question about the festival. This year I am not hosting the festival. I'm taking a break. I know, I'm sorry. It took a lot of thought and pondering and consideration and whatnot, but just for myself, I need to do that this year, and we'll see what next year we'll hold. And I'm actually in the next, like, sometime this week, I'm going to be making the official announcement about that. I was so sad because I love, there's so much about that I love doing, and yeah, I needed to take a little break this year. So no festival this year. sorry for folks who that's just a fun, it's a fun thing for me, and I think for everybody to connect with the speakers and all that stuff. So thanks for asking, Julia. I'm glad you asked about that. Yeah. Yeah. And just to really quickly answer Karen's question, I just because I only have another minute or so, is Karen still here? Yeah, she is. A lot of people take down their feeders and put them back up because of bears. That's a
Yeah.
classic thing that people will do, though. In a lot of places, especially places that are heavily populated with bears, it doesn't matter. Like the bears are still going to come during the daytime, and so it's mostly just best to wait until it's really, really, really cold. There's never like a specific date that you can go off of, because now with the climate changing and everything, I mean, here we're supposed to have like 55 degrees in the next couple of days, but we had very cold temperatures the week for like almost a week or two before that. And so it's tricky, you really have to watch the weather and see what's happening and just be attentive, because the bears, they never go into official hibernation. They go into torpor, which is just a deep sleep. And if it's warm enough, they'll come out of that. And so if you're in a really a high bear area, then you just want to be mindful of that, and maybe just take your feeders down while it's warm and put them back up when it gets really cold out. And yeah, always take them in at night, because you can get raccoons and everything else, like that in the nighttime. And the bears, of course, can come at night. But that's just a quick answer. There's probably more, and we can definitely dive in more on the Facebook page. But thank you, everybody. That was awesome.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye. Thanks.
Okay,
Bye.
bye.
Happy trails,
You
everybody.
too. You too.